Hi everyone. Today we're going to be programming a basic number guessing game within Java. It's going to be building off of some of the things that we've done in our previous videos where we take user input and we manipulate it. As a kid, you probably played the game, hey, can you guess a number between 1 and 10 or 1 and 100? And then you had to guess a number, and then the person thinking of the number would tell you higher or lower, and then you would adjust your guess accordingly. We're going to go through how to program that today in Java. What we're going to do is we're going to use a scanner class like we did in the previous video, and then we're going to also introduce these other concepts of flow control. So let's say that you want to only execute certain code when a condition is true, or let's say you want to execute some code repetitively. We're going to talk about how you do that with if, else cases, and while loops respectively. So without further ado, let's get into the code. All right, I've got the IntelliJ IDE up, and I'm going to select new project, and we're going to call this number guessing. In the code directory, add sample code. All right, that generated a main class for us with the normal system.out.println that I'm going to remove. So the first thing we're going to do is when you play the number guessing game, you've got two people. You've got the person thinking about the number in their head, and then you've got the guesser. So let's figure out what the number that player one is going to have in their head. We could just do something like the program always knows what it is. Let's say it's always 10. But let's make it a little more interesting than that. Let's make this random so that whenever you play the game over and over again, if you're playing against yourself, it actually stays interesting. We're going to create a random number. How do you do that? Well, similar to how we use the scanner class, what we're going to do is we're going to use the random class that comes in the Java util package, and we're going to create a random number from it. So you can see here it highlighted Java util random. That looks good. So I hit enter there, and that automatically imported the class for us. We're going to go ahead and name this random data. And remember that we need to set it equal to something, because what this is doing right now is it's only declaring that we have a variable and not actually giving it a value. So now I'm going to give it that constructor random, and I'm going to make a new random instance that now is held in random data. So now I want to generate a random integer with this random data. So random data dot next int. Now if I hover over this, IntelliJ will give me some information on what that next int method is doing for us right here. This is basically specifying that you could return any integer value. Well, if I'm playing a number guessing game, I'm not going to be able to easily guess something within the realm of a couple billion. I would rather guess within something that I would find a reasonable range. So maybe 1 to 100, something like that. So this actually isn't the function I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and look for a different function. If I search down on next int here, I see two other hits that look interesting. This first one that says bound, and then the second one that says origin and bound. This one looks a little more promising, so I'm going to go ahead and do that one. And now I'm going to put in some numbers. Origin of 1, bound of 100. Now if I read this, now this is saying that I'm returning a pseudorandom generated integer value between origin inclusive and bound exclusive. So when you play a number game like guess a number between 1 and 10, it's kind of up to you whether 1 and 10 are included in there. I would normally think that they would be. So if I want to go from 1 to 100, I actually want to do 100 plus 1, because then that would allow the random number generator to actually generate a value of 100 out of this. So now that I am generating a random integer, I need to actually store the value of it. You'll notice that this next int function, it says it's public, which means I can access it. And then that says int right here. That means that the return of the function is an integer. So I need to capture the return value of this function like that. So we started writing a few lines of code. Let's go ahead and document this with a comment. Generate the target number. And I actually don't really like the variable name random number. I'm going to go ahead and call it target, because that's the target number that player 2 should be guessing. I want to test to make sure this code is working properly. So I'm going to type S out, which is that shortcut for printing something to the console. And I'm going to print out my target variable. I'm going to go ahead and run this a few times and make sure that I am getting numbers in the range that I would expect. Okay, so first time it was 93. Second time it was 41. Third time it was 92. Fourth time it was 87. Technically, there is a little nuance. It's called pseudo-random number generation. That's out of the scope of this video, talking about what's a pseudo-random number generator versus a random number generator. But for all intents and purposes, this is generating random data for us within this range of values. Cool. So now that the random number generator is working, let's try to prompt the user to guess what that random number is. I'm going to go ahead and ask guess a number between... Okay, so now that I'm adding format specifiers, I need to go to the print formatted function and %d. So now I could go in and duplicate these variables, but I don't want to do that because now what happens if I want to change this from 1 to 100 to 1 to 90? Now I have to know 2 places in the code where I would go in and change that value. I don't want to do that. I want to create variables for this, so I only have to store it in one place. I'll do that. Int lower equals 1, int upper equals 100. Now the only thing we have to do is in the bound, since the bound is exclusive in the next int function, we have to still add 1 so that we can guess the upper bound exactly. All right, now let's go ahead and run this and make sure this still works. All right, cool. So now it is prompting us asking for a number between 1 and 100, but it's not actually waiting for us to enter anything. This is where we need to use the scanner class that we did last time. So we're going to type scanner, hit enter to import it, and we're going to set this equal to a new scanner instance over system.in, just like we did in the previous video. If you have any questions on how that works, go ahead and check out that video. Now we're going to get the next integer, and we're going to store that into a variable that we're going to call guess. Now let's go ahead and print out the guess and the target. Another shortcut if you want to print a formatted string in IntelliJ right away is instead of SOUT, it's SOUF. Let's print the guess and the target and run this code. Okay, so guess a number between 1 and 100. I'm going to go ahead and put 90. Oh, actually, it wasn't all that far off. My guess was 90, whereas the random number generator generated 80 there. But it's not telling me that I got the answer right or wrong necessarily in a message. It's just saying, here are the numbers. So let's go ahead and make a conditional logging statement if we were right or wrong. What we do is, this is now some of the flow control logic that we haven't looked at very much yet. We do what's called an if statement. If we add parentheses for the condition that we're testing. This is a Boolean expression, kind of like how we talked about Booleans in the primitive types video. We need to provide the if statement and expression to evaluate. If the statement is true, we will go and execute the code. If it's false, we will not execute the following code. So we're going to check is our guess equal to the target value. Now, one thing you'll note here is that single equals sign. We use that when we want to create what's called an assignment. We're assigning a variable to a value. When we have these two equal signs, sometimes called double equals or equals equals, what that means is that these values need to be exactly the same. They look at equality. So let's say these were the same. I'm going to go ahead and print out correct. But what if they weren't the same? I can type else, and everything within these brackets will indicate what I execute when the statement is not correct. Let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to go ahead and I'll guess 34 this time. Oh, nope, I wasn't right. 29 versus 34. I'm actually kind of close, guys. I got off by 10 the first time and off by 5 the second time. Maybe after a while I'll be able to guess it right on, but it's not very fun if I have to rerun the program every single time I make a guess.
Oh no.
So why don't we make this a little more interesting? We'll now add the concept of continuing to loop through certain parts of the code until our guess is correct. So how we're going to do that is we're going to add what's called a while loop. The general concept of a while loop is you add a condition, just like we added an if check that had a Boolean expression within the parentheses. Anything that exists within the brackets keeps getting executed as long as the Boolean expression is true. So this code actually could be a real problem because this will infinitely loop forever and never leave. You can even see that IntelliJ is giving us a warning about that. While statement cannot complete without throwing in an exception. So now what we want to do is we want to make this Boolean expression something that can change within the body of our loop. So if I'm playing the game, I want to keep playing until I guess the right number, right? So you might initially think, okay, what if my case is while guess equals target, but hold on, you want to loop as long as guess is not equal to target. So the way that you indicate not equal is you throw an exclamation point in front of it. This means I'm going to loop in here forever until guess exactly equals target. But I still have a few problems here. This is indicating that it can't resolve guess, and that's because my guess variable is down here. I'm going to go ahead and do a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to do on Windows Shift Control up arrow, and that moves a line of code up. So now it knows what the guess variable is, and I have the target variable, but I'm not doing anything in the while loop. So within the bounds of this loop, guess and target are never changing. So again, this is going to be an infinite while loop. So let's go ahead and prompt the user each time within the loop to guess a new number. Basically, I'm going to want this code within my loop. But I've got a problem here because I already defined what guess is up here. So I'm actually going to just declare the guess variable without assigning it a value, and then in here, I'm going to assign it a value. But you'll notice that the while loop actually doesn't like that. It's saying, I have a guess variable, but I haven't initialized it to a value. The reason that that's important is because when you have a local variable like guess, how Java works is when you don't assign a particular value to a variable, it uses whatever was the default value at that memory location that the variable is pointing to, which means that this could be literally anything. And there is a tiny, tiny chance that you could happen to have your guess variable actually equal target before you even enter this loop. So that's what this is telling you. So I'm going to go ahead and have this so that it shouldn't equal target. With my current code, I know that target has to be in range lower and upper. So if I put a 0 there, I know that it's never going to exit this while loop immediately without ever executing it. So now if we run this code, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to go ahead and guess a number. I'll guess 1. Okay, my program seems to just be sitting here. It's not doing anything. What's going on? I just keep entering numbers. Okay, nothing's happening. So if you think about it, we're in this loop. We're making guesses. As long as guess is not equal to target, we're just going to keep asking for the next integer from the user input variable, which is reading system.in. I'm not actually telling the user, hey, your answer was wrong, guess again. So I'm going to go ahead and update this code to do that. So let's check if it was the correct number. If guess equals target, correct. Otherwise, if it wasn't, in the likely event that the guess was wrong, you could say guess again. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the existing program, and I'm going to try running it again. How's this look? Guess again, okay. So now we're getting somewhere here, but typically how the game works is player 1 knows the number and is giggling thinking, oh, hey, you don't know my number yet. And player 2 is kind of like, all right, give me a hint. So player 1 says, okay, you got to go higher or lower. So then player 1 can hone in on the area to look for. So let's go ahead and update that next. If guess equals target, we are correct. Otherwise, we're going to add what's called an else if. So now we add another Boolean expression. If guess is greater than target, you might remember greater than or less than signs from math class. Another thing you can do is you can do an equal sign, but we already know that guess doesn't equal target from this Boolean expression above. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Guess is equal to target. Guess is greater than target in this case. So now we want to guess a lower number because our guess is too high. Now the only other case we can have if the number isn't equal and it's not greater is that it is less than. So you might think, okay, I would just write guess less than target. You could, but that's already implied based off of these previous two Boolean expressions. So you can actually just change this to else. Now I want to guess higher. All right, let's go ahead and stop this program and run it again. All right, so now that I know that I have a number to guess and I get a higher or lower indication, I can use binary search. So I'm going to put my number right in the middle. Now I know that it is definitely less than 50. So now if I break that in half again, I'm going to guess 25. So now it is somewhere between 25 and 50. So let's try 37. Okay, now we're really narrowing down where this could be. How about 30? All right, how about 33? There we go. All right, the end number was 33. Very good. So this is an initial take at how the code could work. Now let's go in and make some adjustments to it. So first thing I'm going to do is what am I doing throughout the branching logic of my code and how can I go ahead and clean it up? It's good to always comment your code. Define upper and lower bounds. Now this code is ask user for first input. I don't really love this while loop. The problem I have with this code is that if I set guess equal to 0, what happens if I do something maybe that I shouldn't do and I guess a lower bound of 0 and an upper bound of 0? If I run this code, you'll notice that my logic breaks down a little bit.
Uh-oh.
If I guess a number between 0 and 0, it already says correct, and then it prints out the guess and target without doing anything. Now, this is a bit of an edge case. You probably won't play a game with somebody where you're guessing between the same number, but let's go ahead and switch it up. Let's do 0 and 1. Now this time the code looks like it's going to work fine. I know that the answer has to be 1 because the code checks for if guess is 0 first. So if I run this enough times, I will hit the situation where it guesses 0 immediately. And here it is right here. So this is an example of where I've got code here that makes certain assumptions, and I've got code here that makes certain assumptions, and I need to figure out how to make those assumptions align correctly. But the main problem I was running into was that I had to initialize the guess variable before I could do it in this while Boolean expression. There's a way around that, and that's via what's called a do while loop. So I'm going to go ahead and change this into what's called a do while loop. The main difference between while and do while is that while, if the expression is evaluated at the start and it is already evaluated to false, then you won't even enter the loop. If you have a do while, you guarantee running the loop code at least once. So now I don't have to give guess an initial value. Now the next thing that I notice is that when guess exactly equals target, I get told correct. But I'm already checking that here. Oh, and also, there's no way this else case can even exist because the while loop is verifying that it keeps looping until guess equals target. So these are actually not necessary, but I'm going to change the logic a little bit. I want to limit how big my do while loop is. So I'm not going to check if guess equals target. All that I'm going to do is check if guess is greater than target or if guess is less than target. So now what this did is I know for a fact guess has to equal target to leave the loop. And the implied else case here is that guess equals target. So I don't even need to print anything. I already know what the case is. And sometimes people might want to add a line of code explaining that. So with how the code is written, there's no way I can leave this while loop without verifying that this condition is true. That's not always the case when you talk about break statements and exceptions, but that could be the topic for a future video. But for now, I know that this is correct, and I don't really need to indicate my guesses anymore, so I'm actually going to delete that line as well. All right, so one last thing that I'm going to mention quickly is that the scanner class does have that close function, and the scanner is done, close it. Now in my previous video, I closed it, and that was because I knew that it was the end of the main function and we were done with our code. This time I'm not going to close it because I'm going to show that the code works just fine without that. And in some cases, if there were more code after this that needed the system.in resource, then you would actually have an issue where your scanner already closed it and now you can't open it anymore. So there are things to think about of when you close a scanner, and in this time I'm just not going to close it just to give an example of how this still works. And I forgot to change the range onto something that's actually more of a fun guessing game. So I'm going to change this from 1 to 10. Run it again. All right, lucky number 7. Nope, wasn't right there. How about 4? Cool. All right, very good. So the last addition we're going to make to this code is something that's actually near and dear to my heart, and that is friendly competition among friends. Let's say you've got 2 or 3 friends that are all playing this game. How quickly can you guess the resulting number? So to do that, we're going to make a counter variable that we have to initialize outside of the loop because we're going to use it after the loop is done. We'll go ahead and set it to a value of 0 because we haven't made any guesses yet. Then after each guess attempt, we're going to increment our counter. This little plus is indicating that you want to add 1 onto the value of the counter variable. So it's going to be 0 here, we're going to make a guess, and then it'll be 1. And that is the fastest that somebody could guess this. Let's update our print statement. It took you that many tries. The reason I'm not doing a formatted string here is just because I've got the 1 variable, and I think this is plenty readable. You can go ahead and do a formatted string, or you can do print line like I've got here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and try this out. It's not a 3, that means it has to be either a 1 or a 2. Okay, very good. That was only 2 tries. How about this time? Nope, nope. Okay, and that took me 4 tries. So you can see with not a lot of code, you actually can make a fun game, and you can play with your friends, and while you're at it, you can show your friends how to write Java code, and hey, maybe even introduce them to a video like this. I'd really appreciate it, guys. And that's all there is to it. You've written another Java program. Go ahead and check that as another thing you've done on your list on your journey to learning more about Java. Congratulations. If you like this video or want to see more of that type of content, please take a note to like the video and write a comment if you found this interesting. If you're enjoying the channel content and you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do take a moment to do that. I really appreciate it. Well, that's all I've got for today. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.